when you look at zones, you just have a rectangular boundary, then and we've got a rural acreage type property, you might find that the zones are so that's zone 1, this is zone 2, that's zone 3, this is zone 3, but that's zone 5, that's zone 4, and the remainder is zone 5. I might put a little bit, hold on, put a little bit of zone 4 in there to give us that. This might be a long valley. That means it's too steep. This could be a flatter area. What would change these shapes is the usefulness of the land. So this zone 2 might be quite flatter slope, but there's a steep valley of zone 5 coming in here. Or that zone 5 area of native forest might already be there and you don't want to touch it. So it's the slope and orientation. A lot of zone 1 is mostly lower than zone 2. Zone 2 is more likely to involve more trees. Zone 3 can be open, but it might have trees running through it. So you might have bands of zone 4 running through zone 3. You might have bands running through like this. So you might have zone 4 type links through zone 3. And they might involve water harvesting systems. It's not anything like a concentric circle. You could have a system where zone 1 and zone 2 and zone 3 with zone 4 and a zone 5. It looks to me like this is the sun angle coming this way. So the sun's on this side of the property, shining in. And there's a solar arc here and some open space in front of the house, open to the sun. And there's something here that makes that zone 5. Either it was already zone 5 and they didn't want to change it, or it's a cliff up or down, or a steep slope valley going up or down. And you might be going up with a steep slope, down with a steep slope, or it might have already been old growth forest or good quality natural forest that nobody wanted to touch. So you've got a zone 5 edge, and you've got a zone 4 sort of boundary. Quite often zone 4 can be used as boundary. So that might quite easily change to zone 3. Could easily change to that, and that's zone 4 as a boundary plant into the property. But then contour might make this. Contour and windbreaking might make that also zone 4. And that might give you wind shoulder, and you run in lines of zone 4 in. So there might be zone 4 going in and zone 2 going out a little bit. There's endless sets of variations of how you can apply what you need on the landscape in relation to slope and orientation. But also you've got to take into consideration the outside energies of the property. Maybe there's cold winds, maybe there's hot winds, maybe there's shade that's needed. It will depend where you are. So we've got to go into that in a minute. What exactly are the outside energies involved in designing? Because this is not the complete picture. Then you might look at small acreage properties. Now here the house is going to look bigger in the map. So now the house looks something like this, and we're on a small acreage. Might be smaller than that actually. We might have a zone 1 garden that goes out down the driveway a bit, and a zone 2 that follows suit but doesn't block off the sun. So we might pull that up a bit. That's our zone 2, that's our zone 2. And the rest could be zone 5, or there might be just a section of zone 4, but no zone 3. Zone 3 could be missing because it's not a large block of land, and they don't want a larger grazing, larger cropping system. They've missed out a zone. Zone 3 is the zone that's most commonly left out of design. And you'd look at that and think, well, how could that be zone 5? Well, that might be a slope going down the hill just there. This driveway might be going down the hill. So there isn't a shade effect by zone 5 because it's dropping off just there. If this is the sun coming this way. These are only examples. Obviously, they're not real case scenarios, but always going to be affected by these two. So you'll never see two zone mates the same. Never. They'll always be different. There'll be some common systems, especially when you come down to urban landscape. So if you come down to an urban landscape, there isn't going to be a zone 3 in an urban landscape. It's not going to fit. There isn't really going to be a zone 4 or 5. There could be an expression of it, but that's it. So it's probably all zone 1 really, and there might be a section of zone 2 at the back. Or there might be a section of zone 2 going down the side, like this. And as just a feature, maybe an expression of zone 5, like a little wild garden. It's not really zone 5, but it's feeling of being in Zone 5. Might have a little pond, a bit of a wild section, somewhere to sit and reflect. But really, it's majorly Zone 1 and 2. The urban space is mostly what's in the centre of the larger properties, with a little bit of Zone 2 with it. Although, if you don't want an annual garden, you can have an urban garden that's all Zone 2. You're not going to have enough, it's going to be pretty shady. Or you might have more Zone 2. And you might have something like that. Could even wrap around. You're getting pretty smaller and smaller on the Zone 1 and potentially shading it out. But you might not have time for much of an annual garden. Usually it's the other way around. Usually it's mostly Zone 1 with a little bit of Zone 2. And the poultry are interacting usually in Zone 2 once it's established. And they can be switched from one side to the other. Or you can have a dig for victory type garden promoted in England in the Second World War. You have a house and a chicken house with garden 1 and garden 2, and you switch the chickens and process the garden after it's finished back into fertility while you garden on the other side, and then you switch back again. That was a promoted system. It's a chicken tractor, right? It's a 2-garden chicken tractor with the chicken house in the middle. Or that could be garden, or it could be food forest. So that, you could say that's Zone 1 as a garden, but it's Zone 2 if it's a food forest where you're switching the affected chickens either way. Your application, you can go any way you like. But you can't really get a Zone 3 in there, there's not enough room. You're not going to get that sort of system. Or the whole thing can be Zone 1. Most urban space today is under a quarter of an acre. In a lot of countries too, you also have a road just outside and a nature strip which can extend out, and that can be used as Zone 2 as well. A lot of places that can be planted if you maintain it. And that system of having spare land outside your house between the boundary of the house and the road was only adopted in America, Canada, New Zealand and Australia en masse. It was an English landscape architect, town planner, that came up with this idea of having that green space outside the house between the boundary and the road. Most of Europe couldn't fit it in, although a lot of countries now in modern developments are putting that system in, and it's often mowed as a lawn. But any city that has nature strips like this, if it converts the nature strip, all the nature strips to food production, and all the unused lawns to food production, and redirects its waste streams to the fertility of those growing areas, and all its organic waste product, it can feed itself. So nature strips can be the saviour of some of the cities that have nature strips. A lot of high density cities in a large part of the world don't have them. So although they're a sort of energy waste of time now, they could be converted. I'm proud to say I've never done an urban design without taking the nature strip. Wherever I've designed an urban landscape, I've also designed a nature strip, and wherever I'd implemented an urban garden, I've always implemented the nature strip as well. And I've never been stopped yet. I think it's our obligation to give that, always take that on. It's a useful bit of ground right next to the road. And it's kind of nice to have suburbs that have food running through them. So there's lots and lots of different patterns that come up with zoning for efficiency. And the smaller you get in size, the more efficient per square metre in production you're going to be. So if you ask me which of these are the most productive per square metre, it's going to be the small ones, the urban ones, the most productive per square metre, of course. And then the small acreage, and then out to the larger acreage. Just simply because the human effort over the area is much greater, and the human attention over the area is much greater. So zoning is really pretty much common sense energy planning. And as soon as you understand what it is that you're trying to achieve, it's reasonably simple to work out the size ratios. It all comes from the center of energy in the middle. It all comes from the human energy right in the middle of the design. Now, that's not the end of our analysis. There are a few other approaches to design, but before we even go to the other approaches to design, we've got to look at those outside energies.